It is communities that are on the front lines of this that are leading the way. We cannot repeat the same mistakes. It's now the time for Indigenous peoples to lead because the white people have screwed it up enough. When we work to protect our lands and territories, we're protecting critical biodiversity. This is the biodiversity that's going to clean the air, clean the water, make sure we have that food security, make sure that we have not only futures for ourselves. You know, I come from the traditional territory of Treaty 8, where we're inundated with the largest industrial project on planet Earth, the Alberta tar sands. My community has seen first and foremost the impacts that these industries have, not just on our lands and waterways, but on our people. It is not just a crisis of the land, it is the crisis of our own spirituality and who we are as people. Our name, Kaitale Denesuline, means people of the willow, which is a reference to the delta. There's a real crisis in our community. You know, we're talking about ecological crisis that people are feeling, but our people have been feeling this for 500 years when they have tried to take our lands away from us and simultaneously trying to take away our identities. In my territory, as we've seen the contamination and devastation of our territory, our people don't know who we are anymore. When you take away, you destroy our territory, you're taking away and destroying our very identity. So when we talk about protecting and preserving Indigenous rights, Indigenous law, we are talking about protecting and preserving the natural world. It is one and the same. It cannot be separated. That's why it's become so important to stand not only beside these people that are doing this tremendous work, but we have to create a unified front as Indigenous peoples to flip this system on its head and return to those natural laws that have guided us, that are still there, that are tether us and connect us to Mother Earth. You know, I refer to myself as a half a generation removed from the land because when I was young, I lived on the land with my parents. I learned what it was like to be on the I knew what it was like to pick medicines and understand who my relations were. But I've also had the opportunity to live in the cities and get, you know, Western white man education. And it's offered me an opportunity to see both sides of the coin. And that's a responsibility that I have to bring and take forward. And so through the initiative of Indigenous Climate Action, we're trying really hard to not only build those connections between Indigenous law, biodiversity protection, and our role in addressing the climate crisis, but really, most importantly, is reaffirming and empowering our own communities, because it's our communities that need to be empowered. We don't need to teach the white people this. We need to be teaching our own people how to be reconnected and build the power in our own communities, and that's where real strength lies. So I just want to end with a poem about where I'm from. And it's just a story. And it's just part of the strength that I bring to myself. It's just called Athabasca, where I'm from. My grandfather, Baba, or Isidore, was a man of the land, a man that lived, breathed, and tasted of the earth like so many of our ancestors. He wore his skin like a suit of armor. His ability to withstand the elements would impress even the best of bushmen. He stood tall, he stood fast, all in the face of change. He spoke little English. He was a Dene man, with a Dene face and Dene hands. He was a man of the land, Denesuline. I try to picture the land without the modern dress of our world. No buildings to cascade on the landscapes like weeds poking through the beauty. No highways and roadways breaking up the forest and landscape, desperately trying to mimic the rivers and natural topography. No smoke billowing out of the smokestacks like nightmares taking over the skies. No lights drowning out the moonlight and evening stars glow. Even in its broken landscape, the northern lights break through, letting our ancestors dance in the night sky, showing us the way forward and the way back home. My Baba's navigation was on point and driven by instinct, and the intimate relationship he forged with the land, the rivers, the sky, and the wind. I remember looking at him once when I was young. I was 11. His skin, years of living in the bush. He sat across from me at the table in a trailer in Fort McMurray, eating pancakes. Children ran in and out, filling the home with laughter, crying, sighs, voices, and life, and I watched him eat. He was admirable, even with his missing teeth and simple clothes. He owned nothing. The land owned him, and he was its guardian. Everything of worth existed out there in the bush, and you could see it in his eyes. The trailer was foreign, the pancakes unnatural, the tablecloth beneath his plate unnecessary. It was the Athabasca. Its streams contained the water and fish to eat and drink. The land contained the medicines and berries to heal. The animals provided sustenance and clothing. The trees and landscapes, his church and his sacred. And he sat there, across a small table in a small trailer, with children running about eating pancakes, unable to communicate with me because I knew too little of my language of my ancestors. I desperately wanted to ask him so many questions, yet the only thing I could ask was, "Do you like the pancakes, Baba?" And he responded with the simple "nezo," or good, the little I knew of my tongue. Perhaps he knew, maybe the pancakes were simply good. I couldn't ask for clarification. I was 11 and without my tongue, lost in me and shamed by previous generations, shunned by the settlers in our territory, our language and culture robbed by the missionaries that force-fed us lies, to undermine our knowledge, our roles and responsibilities to the land, to the Athabasca, and our people. Now, our territory, much like our language, lays broken, with mines, pipelines, and toxic pools wreaking havoc on my relations, my ancestors, the land, the water, the animals, the air, the Athabasca that forged the hands of my grandfather. We buried him there in the Delta with his spirit and the spirit of my ancestors. They protect. It has become our role to protect it from here. My grandfather was a man of the land that left his mark in the spirit of me, so that I wouldn't forget my ancestors and the spirit of the Athabasca, so that I can know the truth of my people and our way and what it means to be Denesuline. And I hold that because it is our ancestors that have forged the way. Our ancestors now, like art, that have told us what we need to do. And we need to hold on to that as we move forward and hold on to what it means to be Denesuline, to what it means to be Indigenous. Masicho, hi hi.
Tchekwie, nia Melina mio Rueben Laboucan-Massimo nia nihiao Ktunaxa. I think sometimes it's really hard to listen to all of the destruction and the stories that our communities have. I think a lot of us walk with a lot of grief in our hearts, and sometimes it's really hard to show up on certain days. It's really painful where Eriel and I are from, and I know so many other territories experience the same thing. The tar sands being one of the biggest industrial projects on the planet, it's really hard to feel right in the world sometimes. And the similar experience of Eriel, I grew up on the horse and wagon with my kukum and my Muslim, and they also didn't speak English, they only spoke Nihiao, Cree. And my community in 1988 was blockading, so I was 7 already on the front lines blockading.
blockading the oil and gas and the logging that was coming through in our territory. They built an all-weathered road just before I was born, and it started bringing in, women started miscarriaging. And this was already in the early 80s, and so this is the type of history that we've inherited, just like everyone else, I'm sure, in the room, in different ways. I think it's hard to see our homelands be destroyed and, you know, the earth being our church, the earth, Mother Earth being where we are doing our ceremonies. It's hard to see pipelines in Alberta. We have 400,000 kilometers of pipelines already in Alberta. We have over 100 projects, surface mining, underground mining, that spans 140,000 square kilometers across, crisscrossing across our collective territories. And we see animals dying. We had a massive oil spill. It was 4.5 million liters, 28,000 barrels. That was just, you know, a number of kilometers away as the crow flies from where my family lives. And my auntie, who's taught Cree in the community for 35 years, was texting me, didn't know what to do, saying, our eyes are burning, our stomachs are turning, we can't breathe, do you know what's happening? And only because she knew of the environmental work that I did, she didn't know who else to reach out to, because the government wasn't saying anything. The company wasn't telling anybody anything. So people were sitting in the community with all of the toxic fumes wafting into, breathe that, pregnant women, small children.
We eventually did a flyover, and it was just horrible. Just oil everywhere. Took over the beaver dams. We went down into the muskeg where our medicines grow. Where people hunt, where people pick berries. It was so hard to even just get a helicopter to fly over because everyone would hang up on me. They said, you should be ashamed of yourself for what you're doing. Because they knew I worked for an environmental organization, and they wouldn't even fly us over. And so finally we got somebody that worked on logging and that didn't work with oil and gas that would finally fly us over our own territory, our own community to take pictures. And those are the only pictures that the media finally had because the government wouldn't release what was happening. And, you know, it took 18 months for them to clean, and they said it was reclaimed, and we went back, and it was a dead zone. We went back right where people were, and it was a dead zone. There was paw prints everywhere. There was wolves in the area, and we didn't know if they were drinking the water. It was just black, and we were pulling up murky, like, it was just death. There was no, like the elders say, when there's life on the surface, that the water would be good to drink, and there was nothing. There was just silence. And that's, you know, the type of work that we were trying to do to try to expose it. And it's really difficult to live through that because you carry that trauma with you for the rest of your life. And I think, you know, that's what we see across the Americas, what Tupac was talking about earlier with Abla Yala, with our Indigenous brothers and sisters in the global south and in the north. I've been to Ecuador, I've seen where they've dumped as well. The same thing, pulling up toxic sludge from Mother Earth. And I've talked to other elders in those territories, and also their children dying from drinking the water. But sometimes it feels really alone, so that's why I'm so grateful to be able to be with our brothers and sisters here today that stand with us, because it feels alone, but it's amazing when Tsleil-Waututh and Secwepemc and Squamish and other nations stand up with us and say, no, enough is enough. Basta, ya, basta. That's why I think it's so important we tell our own stories, and that's a part of, you know, when I used to work at Redwire Media Youth Society, Indigenous Media Arts Group, before there was social media, that's the type of stories we were trying to tell, you know, 2003, 4, 5,
right around the time that I finally met Kanahus, and we did a powerful action outside of Kelowna, and I remember the feeling of being with a row of women and rushing towards the doors where there was closed doors and secret deals were being made, and we rushed to the door, and you could feel the spirit just rush in, and all these white people back up and freak the fuck out. It was amazing, but it was amazing, and I think that's what's coming back is you know, decolonization and bringing back the matriarchy, and our people working together, putting aside the hurts and trying to heal and know that people are not disposable in our communities, that we work together. And asserting rights to title is bringing back the matriarchy. And so that's why after that oil spill happened back home, I just started to start building solar projects. And I decided to start building, yes, I'll say no, but what is the yes? What is the yes to the no? What is the solution to our economic hostage situation that's happening in our territories? And so that's why I started fundraising for a 20.8 kilowatt system that powers our health center in Low Buffalo in our community. And it was the first time people had seen solar panels. My auntie, who's in her 70s, and she came to the solar launch, and she pulled me aside. She says, "Oh, well, I never thought I'd see solar panels before. I only seen them on TV." And so she was real happy to see them in person. And we started training the young people. And we had, you know, 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds helping put up the project. And we built it from the ground up. And it was actually the first time I ever cried tears of joy when we broke ground for that project, because I thought, wow, these young people, the 5-year-olds, the 7-year-olds that see this in front, it's built right in front of the community school, and that they'll see solar energy for the first time, and they'll see it for at least 25 years more of their lives, and they'll know what solar energy means, that you're bringing power from the sun, and how it's more connected to our Indigenous philosophies and ways of life, of reciprocity and respect for Mother Earth. And I know it's not perfect, but it's a way for us to transition to more renewable and sustainable forms of not destroying our homelands. And that's what's happening in Alberta, is that our own people are forced to destroy our own homelands to put food on the table, and that's not right. It's not right that that's the only choice that they have. And so that was a part of, and then when Kanahus, and there was, you know, we came up and we were talking, and they decided to start the Tiny House Warriors, I said, okay, well, then we'll start solarizing the Tiny House Warriors. And so I wanted to show a quick video to end that shows the project. If you just go to sacredearth.solar, you can see 3 of the different projects that I've put up so far. In September, I'm actually going out east to Ontario to put up a project with Christy Belcourt and Isaac Murdoch to solarize their language and culture camp. So I think, you know, because our communities are literally living off of diesel, and that diesel is an immense greenhouse gas emitter, and it can immense contributor to climate change. So the fact that we have over 300 plus Indigenous communities across Turtle Island, just in the north of the Medicine Line, living 24/7 off of diesel is a problem, and we need to transition our communities back to sustainability and self-reliance. And so that's a part of this type of transition, to educate our own people how to implement this type of technology. So I hope the video works. It works? Okay, and the sound works? Okay, just one sec. What? Oh, okay. I just wanted, okay, I'll say something. I was just going to say one last comment, that I wanted to agree with what Janice and Tom said, and all the leaders on the panel earlier, that I'm really grateful for their work, decades of work, but I agree that we really need to address the governance issues that plague our communities and include our spiritual leaders into the decisions that are being made, because if we don't address this, our communities will continue to not be able to break free from the shackles that still bind us to this colonial structure. So, hi.
We're gonna show a video now. Could someone turn off the lights? Does someone know the lights? With a switch. Hold on. Does anybody want? No one wants to move? Thanks. Okay, we figured out how to operate it.
The mobile solar unit is really important because it helps the tiny house warriors be able to power their electronics when they're on the front lines to be able to protect themselves.
Hi everybody, I'm here back in Blue River. Beautiful, beautiful homeland. I'm Secwepemc Ktunaxa, and you can see right here at the entrance of our Tiny House Warriors village site, we're here. We have 4 of our tiny houses.
We come from 180,000 square kilometers of territory that this pipeline proposes to go through.
You know, we need to be able to document all of these, document the construction that's continuing to happen, but also our safety, because we are, battling against a big oil and gas industry. By having this mobile unit, the solar unit, it allows us to be able to charge our phones, our cell phones for safety.
We're right now in Blue River. This is the area where the proposed man camp is.
So man camps unfortunately have brought violence in and around Indigenous communities and violence towards women. We've seen this repeatedly.
We're out there in the bush, pretty well isolated. We've already had racist residents. We've had people, targeting us, coming and threatening us. We even had gunshots.
I'm here at Secwepemc Camp at 44.5 kilometers on Wet'suwet'en territory, where we were invaded on January 7th.
We are the most over-policed and under-protected. Why do we have thousands of women on these murdered and missing Indigenous women databases? We are a target.
As a community member that's lost my sister, it's really important that we do not have violence against our women, and we do not have more murdered and missing Indigenous women across this country, especially in resource extraction zones. If we continue to extract tar sands, we're going to see it as game over for the climate, especially the next biggest mine, the mega mine called Tchekwie.
It doesn't matter how much consultation happens with the federal government or this pipeline, we've already said no.
It's important for us to build the solutions and the type of energy that empowers our people, that empowers our community to make the transition now. I'm here today asking for people to continue to support us as we protect our homelands. Protecting the land and protecting our women go hand in hand.
Okay. One comment.
I just want to mention one thing let's clap for the video first. Because these women are badass. Like, these are some badass women. So there was a mention of Tchekwie in here. So Tchekwie is the largest ever proposed tar sands mine. The Canadian Environmental Assessment Agency just put forward their recommendation to public's interest, even though they admitted that it caused irreparable and irreversible harm to the environment, to the rights of Indigenous peoples, and will make it nearly impossible for Canada to make its commitments under the Paris Agreement. That approval needs to be approved by the Minister of Environment and the Prime Minister before it gets approved fully for construction. And so we do have an opportunity now to start sending a message to the governments to not approve it. But on a personal note, that project is 17 kilometers from the boundary of my community. 17 kilometers from a place called Poplar Point, where it has an ancestral burial ground. This is the traditional, or the critical habitat for one of the last remaining genetically unique herds of bison in the region, a herd of woodland caribou. And most importantly, this is the territory of our people, and it runs along the river of the Athabasca River. And they're going to be creating tailings ponds, mega mines, the refining. They're going to bring in roads to a part of the delta that have never had roads before. We don't even have a road to our community, and they're going to build a road to a mega mine. So these are things that we're still up against. So it's not only important for us to stand in solidarity to stop these pipelines, but we have to stand in solidarity to stop these projects at the source. And this is an opportunity for all of us to come together. So thank you, Masicho.
Okay.